Hey everybody, welcome back to InnRoads RPG Jam Sessions. I'm here with my buddy Brian.
Hello.
Welcome back, dude. So a little sadness this week because your Star Wars evening was not so
Yeah,
Star Warsy.
not so Star Warsy. It was a
Yeah,
little delayed. Yeah. What was supposed to be that perfect week of gaming last week ended up being, or just a really good week of gaming. But
yeah.
we had some stuff come up, and one of our players had some family coming to town unexpectedly, and so uh, we looked, but we couldn't find any time to rearrange. So we agreed it was wise to give our evenings back to our wives.
Frickin' adulting, man. Every single time. Every
Yeah.
time. Um, I was gonna say, like, if it was me, if I had been like, getting ready to game master a session, especially Star Wars, if it didn't turn out, I probably would turn off all the lights and just watch Empire Strikes Back, over and over again,
Yeah.
until my wife came in and dragged me out because the room was smelling too bad, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we considered running, I threw out the idea of running like a side campaign, sort of a flashback style, or just even, totally different characters if we wanted to. But we decided we'll
Yeah.
wait and play it with everybody when we can get all back together. And of course, being the Christmas season, it's not gonna probably be till January.
Yeah, this is a tough time for gaming. That's for sure.
And Sunday nights are game night, and Christmas and New Year's are both on Sundays. So kind of just that perfect storm this year. So we'll delay it a little bit and see where we get back to.
Well, that's okay. That's okay
Yeah,
because you and I we can find things to talk about.
I
You
can
know.
always talk games.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, we can always talk games, and that's exactly what we're here to do. You know what? For me, I kind of like you. The anticipation of certain games, is something that I put up there. And like I said, if I'll go into my hall of seclusion if the game
yeah,
doesn't come up, but. I got lucky this last week. Had a couple of really great games, you included,
yeah,
in our game last week with Crud, Rough Gut, and Squeak, and Ursula, and then a new addition to the game crew.
yeah,
So Falconian's in real wife
yeah.
joined up, and she's doing a fantastic job. So it's that right there in and of itself, adding a new player to a game can change a dynamic quite a
Oh, yeah.
bit. I mean, sometimes like if it's just somebody and they're going to be jumping in, that's one thing. You kind of know what their modus operandi is, right? But with introducing somebody that you don't know, it's very helpful to have at least somebody in the group who knows them, and
Yeah.
bring them in into an ongoing story. But the job of the GM is to be ever adaptable, right?
Yeah.
And the best way that I've seen to be adaptable is to use tables. It just
Yep.
absolutely is my go-to when it comes to session prep. I so far, I mean, you were talking a little bit about Star Wars. I mean, have you had to dabble too much into tables yet?
Not too much. I think, you know, in my prep in getting ready to run the game, I think I probably spent the majority of my time sort of crafting some different pathways to sort of add on to that module that was the starter game. um, and I did a little bit of generation. I had a little, here are some places they could go. I took the time to go generate a bunch of Star Wars names that I could just have on a flashcard or something that I could just you know
Mm-hmm.
put my finger down and go, and yeah, this guy's name is, and just cross it out, and
Yeah.
just so I didn't have to try and make up a name on the fly. But I started, it was, yeah, I pseudo tables, you might call them. I had lists of possible NPC, stormtroopers, and I made sure I had all those possible sort of NPCs with their stats available, because that's what I was more worried about.
Yeah.
Was um, not wanting to make that stuff up on the fly. I wanted to be pretty well prepared being new to the system. I think as you got used to it, you could probably, if it was a minor NPC, just sort of, make that up with, especially with that Star Wars dice system. It's a little easier. There's no armor classes or anything like that, really.
Right, you can pull something out of your hat really quick.
Yeah, and they're not going to know. And you go, yeah, that's an average check, and they're not going to know why it is or isn't. Or you could, they're really savvy at negotiation, so that's a add a red die. And you can, if you know a bit about that character, you can tend to make those things up a little bit. Though I felt like being prepared was nice. It definitely came in handy when they threw some wrenches at me, like trying to lowball their contact, who also happened to be a junk merchant. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, oh yeah, she's really good at negotiation. She's good at this, and I'm going, okay, and being able to roll with that. So I definitely.
I'll give you $10 for this Millennium Falcon. What say you?
And so I had some tables, but I didn't have a plethora of tables, and it was one of those ones that I kept thinking about, going, boy, it'd be really nice if I had some time to build some bigger tables. But when push came to shove, there were just a few different things that I felt like kind of were a little more mission critical.
For sure.
Really wanted to get that map down for Roll20, and I got all the tokens placed and in the GM layers so they can't see them until I want to pop them out. And there are a few of those little tricks and sort of bells and whistles that I leaned more towards, because it wasn't going to be too sandboxy. I didn't really have to worry too much.
We talked about that story funnel, right? You have the whole bunch of options that's going to lead you to one particular outcome.
Yeah.
So it makes tables can be fun just for those kind of random odds and ends. When you're dealing with an adventure like this, when you have something that's pre-written, sometimes they're going to have those tables baked in. Right, yeah. So you're not going to have to worry too much. You're not going to have to go too far afield. But it's when they decide that they don't want to go to Alderaan, they want to go to Tatooine, or they want to go to some other planet. Hey, that looks like a moon. Is that a moon? Yeah. Well, I don't want to go to Tatooine. I want to go to one of its moons. Okay. There's nothing there. Oh, because you didn't have anything planned? No. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, in that funnel, the catch-22 I sort of ran into is by the time I got to the point where I had enough time to make the tables, we were already so far down the funnel, I didn't need the tables anymore.
Nice.
So, that's why I didn't really do those. I think if it turned into, hey, we wanted to turn this into more of an open session and run a full sort of campaign, absolutely, that would be all of the rest of the prep, would be sitting down and generating possible tables. And for Star Wars, it would be intelligence you're going to pick up on, and this is intelligence that's going to come in for the rebels, and various different commanders and missions that are going to come in, and
you've managed to find the one Mon Calamari Imperial officer. Wait, what? Hey, look, that's what I rolled on the table, dude.
Sorry, the table said. Yeah,
that's what it says. I'm sorry.
So that I think that's where I would be heading towards. Right. I think it definitely, the type of campaign you're doing or session that you're running really determines how much or how little you do need those tables. Right. You can do a one shot that's totally sandboxy, Dungeon World sort of style.
Sure.
And boy, you're going to need all sorts of things because you don't know what's going to happen. And
right.
Or you can run, Storm King's Thunder, and it's like, oh, it's a whole thing, but they've got all the stuff in there you probably need to make your own
For
table, unless you just wanted to go that extra mile. So, yeah.
I've had the times when I've really used tables has been when I've been generating NPCs on the fly. And sometimes, actually I may say, like, they're going to be in this particular town and they may go to this bar. Like I'm thinking of a Shadowrun game that I ran a little while ago. And I knew that there was going to be either this dive bar over here or they were going to go to this cafe over here. And so I was kind of like setting up little, I don't want to call them set pieces, but just potential places to go. Yeah. And so I would roll up NPCs and think, okay, I just want to have like one or two things about them that will call them out as unique. One of the best things that you can do as a GM is to give a little bit of depth to the world around your PCs. They go over to this wagon and maybe they just ask you, hey, is there somebody around here who's selling shoes? And you think, yeah, there's a shoe store right there. There's a cobbler. So you go in there and you pull out a card and it says, okay, I've got some, workers type people. And then here's one, he's missing an eye and he's got a club foot or something like that. So just kind of giving a little bit of depth to the places that the players may not even expect that to be. Yeah. And so having those tables on hand, whether it's during your session prep or actually having it ready to go on the fly, is really, it's so much. It makes your job easier, number one, especially when you're dealing, like you said, those sandboxy type games. It makes your job easier, number one, but number two, it's a big benefit for the players. It gives them that opportunity to say, oh, you know what, I'm finding something. Is this important to the game? I don't know. But I guess it doesn't matter because it just means that the world's a little bit more realistic for me. Right? So,
I think that's something that's so important. I'm currently rereading Lord of the Rings right now. And, you're just finding, I'm actually, it's funny, we're talking about tables and I knew we were going to be talking about this. So I've actually been sort of reading Lord of the Rings with the intent of trying to pull out some ideas. So if we ever, when Adventures in Middle-earth finally hits my hands, and if I may, if I do or don't do any GMing, I'm like, oh man, I want to have, because that's a setting that I'm like, oh, it'd be great. But that thing about Tolkien that makes that world so fabulous is that there's all that fleshed out history that it's that iceberg we were talking about. He's
exactly.
Painting, he's dropping these names and he's calling one thing by four different names, like that. Everybody just kind of knows that. And
right. Gandalf. He's Gandalf the Grey, the Grey Rider, or the Mithrandir, and it's just like, okay, well, I guess maybe where he's at is why he's called that name, or
he's got the and so there's this with Tolkien he actually did have like this whole crazy backstory.
If anybody who's ever attempted to read the Silmarillion, number one, you're a champ, and number two, you're my hero if you finished it.
That was a rough one.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I don't think I ever read it straight through. I think I flipped through it. It was crazy. But you can give that illusion of those by those things that you said, having that depth, so that just if it's the guy that you're talking to on the street, he's giving, these random sort of people they're passing are really fleshed out, and those details that when all that compounds that story then is huge, gives you that weight. And so having that extra detail, even if it's just a side conversation that means nothing to the actual plot points that you're progressing through, that's what I think personally, that's the kind of games I like to play and to be part of, rather than just, I go kill monster and
it doesn't make it as impersonal as some games can be. It's not saying one style is better than another, because you'll find players that enjoy just, hey, I want to plow through and do this dungeon crawl and I want to get through it and get it done. But then you may find that there's some players who had that incidental contact with a cafe owner and they know that that person's nice and is willing to overlook certain things. So the next time you get into a firefight and you need a place to hide out, oh, I might go hide out in this this cafe somewhere. So it's little seeds that you can plant. One cautionary tale I will not so much describe but just warn is, don't overdo the descriptions. Be careful with what you drop in there, because sometimes the players may not kind of know, okay, I need to write this down, or I need to put this in here somewhere. And be mindful around the table that if they are taking notes or they're taking some kind of mental note, you've been with your players long enough, you'll know when they're taking mental notes. But be prepared that you may have to bring that person back out again. So make your own note as well. If you randomize something, you think, oh wow, this is awesome. Your players may think so too, and you may need to make sure you come back to that later. So don't forget what you create.
Oh yeah. You got to pull that out, and you got to actually pin it to the session, the encounter, who they were, what they had. Yeah.
That's actually, that's a good one too. Encounters. There's, if you go all the way back to AD&D first edition, mad props to the Mad Cleric for braving that frontier and going back there. The number of tables that are in that old DMG that can be of help and can also be completely flabbergasting is amazing. There's just tables for anything that you could possibly think of, weather events, poisons, all sorts of things. So that one is kind of like, it's been like an old go-to for me if I needed to find some form of random table that I could just cut and paste or write down or something like that. So I can use some of the old sources. So if you find sources of those tables, like that old DMG, or even the new one, the 5th edition DMG has some fantastic options in there, all the way down to, or I shouldn't say down, but all the way up to my favorite table of all, the Trinkets table, which I have second session of our D&D game. We did not do the Trinkets.
Do our Trinkets, yeah.
I was too busy realizing we had a new player, and I was too excited. I forgot all about it. We're going to come back to that, so we'll find out about that. But yeah, the Trinkets table, even something as simple as that can add a sense of depth, a sense of flavor. During our RPG, our D&D session, the first one that we actually ever did as InnRoads, when we were playtesting 5e, Perna had picked up a little sprite, a dead sprite, in a jar. And so the thing is like, how do we bring that into the game? And so you can have fun with that. Don't feel like you have to.
Yeah.
But when they get those trinkets or they get those particular items off of a table, it might seem pretty random, but then again, it might be a random spark of something cool.
Yeah.
So take advantage of what you get. So let's actually jump into an example of something that you guys can use on the fly and also in session prep. And I use this quite frequently. Hey everybody, Uncle Jeff here. You would expect to see Brian down here below me, but unfortunately, I happen to accidentally not have the recording function on audio, including the video, when I first started off the recording, and I changed scenes. So I'm going to wing it here a little bit. I'm going to bring in some of the information that we talked about during that exchange, and then we're going to have me and Brian back here at the end of this little description that I'm going to throw together. So we spent some time talking a little bit about some of the tools we have available as GMs, especially for folks who are just now starting off as a game master. It's really fantastic to have the ability to say, and actually Brian's going to say this later, to be able to say yes to a player when they bring something out of the blue into the mix. So if you've got a plan for them in a cyberpunk setting, whatever the case is, they're heading down the road and your plan is for them to go to the drug lord's hideout, right? They're there to stake them out. But then they say, you know what, I'd really like to get a lay of the land first, so can we visit a couple of dive bars or a cafe or some kind of fast food joint or something where we can pick up the vibe of the neighborhood? And you're thinking, wow, I spent all this time putting together the dungeon of the drug lord's den, but I didn't plan anything for local taverns or whatnot. you don't have to feel dismayed at that time. You know, you may need a little bit of a moment to kind of prep a couple of things, which is totally fine. In most cases, your players are going to understand that. But hey, you know what? There are tools like what I have over here on my left side, such as Donjon, that can provide with some random information, some random names, places that you can go to, like a tavern, even whole planets that you can put together and actually just design fairly quickly. So maybe at the time that they decide they wanted to go into a bar, you think, hey, this would be a good break time. Why don't you guys grab some snacks? I'm going to put something together, and then we're going to do this right. Or if you get really good at it, not like me, I'm a little slow when it comes to this stuff, but if you get really good at it, oh my goodness, you can just bam, 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 start generating things on the fly. So, for example, again, I'm looking at Donjon here. It's donjon.bin.sh is the website, and I'll include it in the show notes later, along with a couple of other ones that Brian discovered that were more specific to Star Wars and his campaign. So take a look at what I got right here. The home page right now has a whole bunch of things that you can already start deciding on. And you can look at the breakdown over here on the left that gives you the different things to choose. I was just talking about going into a dive bar. Maybe you want to have a couple of random names ready to go. Well, you just go over here to the name generator right at the very top, and I can just start going boom, 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 just names left and right. You can call somebody Lint, Hunter, Metmany. It doesn't matter. You can find names all that you want. You can even, let's say they were supposed to go to a particular planet and they don't, you can even create a quick planet on the fly right here where you can design certain types of atmospheres. You can have an atlas format. You can decide on what kind of water percentage is available. You know, look at that. Boom. Just now designed a whole planet for gameplay. And you may not be doing something like that on the fly so quickly, but there's a lot of options here. So a couple of things that Brian had mentioned as were part of his favorites was the full random generator over here. This right here is a generator for NPCs. So right here I can decide if I want to have, let's say I need a female NPC who's a human, who is a particular adventuring class, let's say a martial class, and I want to have a certain type of culture. I can go through ancient world, medieval Europe, far Asia, Africa. Let's say I make them Egyptian. Now all of a sudden I have a whole bunch of names with little peculiarities about the types of things that they have, the kind of hair that they have, their face. Look at this guy right here. Suffers from a traumatic fear of injury. Maybe not the best weapon user in the world, maybe not the best fighter in the world, but you know what, maybe that's why they wear a plate mail and why they have the longsword ready to go all the time, because they're afraid of suffering harm. So you can have a lot of these things at your disposal right at the onset. So if I needed a guard super quick because they decided they want to break into some place, well, boom, you know what, I've got, let's see, 10 that I can choose from right here. All of them have their own little peculiarities that you can bring to life in the game. And that's really what it's all about. We had a chance to talk a little bit here, Brian and I, about how even these little subtleties in your game can bring about a vividness, a breath of life to the world around them. They may visit a town and they are only there to visit a tavern, or only there to visit the local cleric and then get in and get out. But if along the way you're able to throw in, random descriptions of individuals, you find somebody here. Look at this. This guy has a battle axe and a shield and has an animal companion that's a red fire drake. How does that stands out, right? Your players may walk by and think, okay, this is a small town, but this guy has a pet as a fire drake. Are they local to this area? Do we need to be worried about those kinds of things out in the road? All of a sudden, as a GM, you have some seeds to work with because you see what they're keying off of, what interests them. So lots of opportunities there. One thing that I've used this personally for, the recent one-shots that we went through when I did the adventure in Ravenfell, the map that I had for that underground cavern, I actually put together here in a matter of moments. So I'll walk you through that real quick. I was in the D&D 5e section right here. So you can see the options that are available. You can look at spell sheets, monster lists, yada yada. So I went right to the random dungeon encounter. You have maps that you can generate. I decided that I wanted to go with, let's see, a cold motif. The map style, I decided I was going to go with glacial. Let's see here, the dungeon layout. I wanted to make this cavernous. And so now all of a sudden this is starting to take shape. Cool thing here, check it out. I can go ahead and randomize it, or I can go with one I want. Dungeon level 1, party size 4. Boom, I've got a dungeon layout all set. I can decide on where the entrances are, that sort of thing. I have numbers that are available here, but you know what? Down here below, you can decide if you want to have a player map that's generated so that they don't have the numbers, and it keeps that grid. You can turn the grid off or switch it to hex or vert hex. Then it also includes wonderful little inclusions of room numbers with the monsters and certain treasure that you can find in that room. It's the ability to throw together something super fast is fantastic. Now, during the one shot, while I may not have used any of this material here, if I found out that the players were really savvy and they were blowing through the baddies that I had left in there, heck, I've got a whole bunch that I can just draw from down here. Makes the job so much easier. I stress out less and I can focus more on the players around the table and what they like. So that's kind of a cool little side effect of this, having these tables, is the ability to lower your stress and kind of get some of that work off of your shoulders. It's going to, in the long run, make things a little bit easier for you. It's going to make things a little bit fun, dare I say, because if you're not having to worry about these kinds of things, you're not going to exude that on at the table. You know, I remember my first couple times when I first jammed, I was nervous as heck. And that was because I had stacks and stacks of things that I thought I needed to prep and I needed to prep. And that may be a style that suits you because you are really good at that kind of a prep and being able to keep in mind where things are at all times. But if you're kind of like me, where you've gravitated more up to a low prep thing, where you're focused more on the narrative, a little bit less on the crunch, then these are the kinds of things that can really help you out in the long run. So, you know, things like crunch, if I wanted to create a random encounter and I wanted to make sure that I had everything that I needed, I could say, okay, I want some medium-sized creatures, I want beasts, I want to, let's see, I'll have maybe, let's have an alignment, we'll have chaotic or lawful evil, let's say. Well, no monsters there, no problem, I can remove that tag and then keep whatever's left. So I have that ability as well. I can update for challenge ratings, so I can get anything that's a 1 right there. Swarm of equippers. And if you're lucky, they're going to have a lot of them that have details in here like that you can actually get the stats for that creature. So again, it's just tools that you're going to be able to use in the long run. Now, as we transition back to both Brian and I talking, he does bring up a couple of really cool tables here, and they're more Star Wars focused. So, for instance, we have this site here from Fantasy Flight Games. It's within their community, and again, I'll have the link down there in the show notes. But it gives you a couple of really cool options for a loot table. So you can go in here and you can start taking a look at some of the tables that are available. This may not show up the best within your screens, but you can follow the link and find these little JPEGs where they have loot tables available for whatever certain encounters it may match up with within Star Wars. There's also information. Here's some more loot tables. Here's another one that is called Triumph and Despair, which has random encounter descriptions. So you can go through here and have a full encounter built out for you. And they'll have separate articles that are available for you to take advantage of. So for instance, this one here is about a random event about a deactivated Imperial probe droid. And what does that involve? So take your time, look at these tools. You've got an entire trove of information that's available to you. I mean, look at this right here. I'll leave you with this and we'll move back over. Random Adventure Generator. Right there under the fantasy tag. All of a sudden, I've got a new adventure with a certain theme. You know what? I don't know if I really want to have intrigue, so let me do a different, or espionage. Ooh, horror. I'm going to do horror now. So you have a whole setup here. If, let's say, they decide to not follow along with the campaign that you're going with, and they want to do something different, boom. Here's a quick solution for you. it's a way to be prepared for the unpreparable, if that's even a word. I don't know. Before I start inventing new words, let's get us back over to the conversation with myself and Brian. At this stage, we're talking a little bit more about improvisation, and we start talking very briefly about Critical Role and the talents that they have there. The one-shot RPG also comes up, I believe. So enjoy the rest of the recording. Thanks for your patience. Mea culpa, sorry for the mess up in the middle there, but I definitely wanted to honor the fact that Brian had contributed quite a bit to this discussion, and I want to make sure that we're sandwiched in between those great conversations that we had. So, see you in a moment.
Highly sort of adaptable GM style where the players are going full out and they're just working over here, and that GM taking it and rolling with it.
Right.
Sort of, I'm thinking of, Critical Role obviously is a pinnacle of sort of, obviously they got an idea and a plot core, but those players are all over the place, and the best moments are almost always when they try something wacky and Matt Mercer just rolls with it, and exactly. Plays it. And I was listening. I don't know if you've listened at all to the Campaign podcast by the guys.
Choice, yeah, actually, yeah.
Do one shot, and it's actually, I just started at session 1 because they're running Edge of the Empire,
right.
And they're purposely doing it as to be a narrative form. My word, these guys are all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, it's so much better than if they would have just done something. It's that,
right.
And so being drawn to that, I'm like, the only way you can really do, unless you're just an absolute improv genius.
Which at the One Shot RPG podcast.
Oh, the One Shot guys, they are.
That's granted, that is their bailiwick, but yeah, unless you're completely a genius like they are, you'd have a few of those little handheld resources you can just grab and.
Yeah, I think tables allow you as a GM to take a step to that in play styles to say, what do you guys want to do? Here I'm dropping a juicy little and dangling this juicy carrot, and I got a good thing. But you go, no, I don't want to do that. And I think to that first D&D session I ever played with you, I could tell you were dangling carrots, but I want my PC would not bite.
I love that. I love that so much. It was so good.
Yeah, I was like, I know that I should, but I can't because I wanted to play my PC as true to form as I could, and so you had to, kind of roll with that and kind of.
I improvised the shop scene. That was completely improvised. In that one session, and then a lot of the parts that were inside the big Wolf's Hall. The Wolf's Den Hall, that I had to improvise quite a bit because of the directions that you went in there. So, but it's having those tables, having the advantage of saying, okay, if they do go crazy, I've got some crazy tables I can work with. I can link them up with something crazy if that's what they're looking for, and it takes the pressure off your shoulders of saying, gosh, what am I gonna do if they do something crazy? It's like, no problem, I got a table just for that.
I got one. I'm ready for it. And and what I like about that, and again, some of these sort of actual play podcasts that I'm like listening to for inspiration and things. But one of the things I love the most is when the players say or come up with something absolutely crazy, and the DM doesn't go. They go, yes, okay.
Let's do this.
It's that, it's that there's a bit of that idea, it's probably getting beaten to the bush too much of the yes and as a GM. You should say yes and or yes but, try to say yes. But I think that it's at a different level where it's not there. You're going, okay, well, I'm going to tell myself I'll say yes.
Right.
Like I'm a crotchety GM. Like I want to be a GM who's just as excited about this wacky thing as they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they feed off of that, right?
Yeah.
That's when the creative stuff just starts flowing. Yeah.
Sure. And I guess that's a style. I come to this more as wanting to be a GM as collaborator rather than adversary. I'm not trying to craft a dungeon that will defeat you or that you've got to really work to get it. I'm like, I want to have fun. I want to tell the story. And then again, that is definitely it's a style.
It's a style
that I lean towards. But again, that you want to have something that they, that crushes them down. Unless you want to just absolutely railroad your players.
You can.
There's grueling dungeon can have tables. Should have tables. You're saying, that's where Gygax started it out. Sounds like he's the master of the tables.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that you can go all the way back to that kind of dungeon and grind type thing. I think actually quoth the Mad Cleric in his latest article. But the perspective of being an advocate for the players is fantastic. Your players are going to be much better for it. The one thing is, these tables can do two things. Number one, they can help you in sandboxy situations, and then they can also help you in indecisive situations. So you can also help them along if, maybe they don't know quite what to do. Maybe you let it open too far. You can actually use these to bring them in and say, okay, well, I'm going to generate something real quick here that's going to say, okay, here's something that appears on your heads-up display or whatever. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you don't know what you want to do, and roll it, and beep, 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 beep. Here comes a transmission just came in, and it says X, Y, or Z, and what are you gonna do with that? Ignore it? Okay.
What are you gonna do? No, I'll throw out a little twist here. We're gonna bring it to a close. Oh man, that's. But hey, this is the kind of thing that we're talking about for new game masters, is little tools and things that you can use and increase your experience in playing, no pun intended, in playing these games. Even though there's not a tried and true method for doing this, so don't feel like if you don't like using tables as one of the things on your tool belt, no problem, that's okay. But this is just an opportunity to give you all the tools you can use. So I think that we'll bring it to a close for this episode. I think the topic of tables is a fun one that we could probably continue on. We'll throw some information down here in the show notes with regards to where to find Donjon, and then hey, why not we'll throw in the link to the one that you just found for Star Wars. That's pretty awesome. And if you have any questions or anything, hit us up in the tavern on Facebook. Again, the link will be down there below. You can message me on Twitter at GSPKheegan, GSP Keegan on Twitter. But we really thank you guys for stopping by, taking a listen. We look forward to providing another episode for you next week.